Today, we're going to be diving into it's a pretty heartbreaking story. Yeah, it's the attack on that children's dance class in Southport, England. It happened last summer, a Taylor Swift-themed class. All, little girls excited for the holidays.
Yeah.
And our main source for this is a news report from the Associated Press. It covers the sentencing of the attacker. I know this is, heavy stuff, but I really think it's important that we're trying to understand this tragedy, and what we can learn from it.
It's definitely a difficult case, but it does raise some crucial questions about, well, individual motivations for one, but also the systems that are supposed to be in place to protect us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might be wondering why we're revisiting this event.
Yeah.
It's painful. But it's not just about reporting the news. It's about, trying to learn something from it. What signs might we miss? How can we as a society do better?
Yeah, I think that's a crucial point. We tend to focus on the how of these events, the logistics, the weapons used, but understanding the why, I think, is just as critical.
Right. So let's start by unpacking what happened. Back on July 29th, the article describes this scene of, pure innocence shattered. These little girls making bracelets, singing along to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Probably with their parents nearby, picking up their happy little dancers after class.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, this horrific violence.
Yeah, the attacker, 18-year-old Axel Rudakubana, he just burst into the studio,
And he began stabbing the children and the teacher. 3 girls, ages 6, 7, and 9, were killed. And another 8 children and 2 adults were injured. Some of them very seriously.
The article mentions one girl was stabbed 32 times, another 85 times. It's horrific. And what's even more disturbing, I think, is Rudakubana's behavior. During his sentencing, the article says that he was actually removed from the courtroom for being disruptive. Yeah, he started shouting that he was sick, demanding a paramedic. Right in the middle of the prosecution's statement, it's almost like a complete lack of awareness of the gravity of the situation, the pain that he caused.
Yeah. And then on top of all that, we have his statement to the police after the attack. He said, "It's a good thing those children are dead. I'm so glad. I'm so happy." I mean, how do you even process something like that?
It definitely points to a deeply disturbing psychology. But what's interesting is that despite this apparent lack of remorse, Rudakubana pleaded guilty to all charges, 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, and even charges related to possessing a knife, ricin, and an al-Qaeda manual.
Okay, so we have this young man who's clearly fascinated with violence and death, but there doesn't seem to be a clear political or religious motive behind his actions. The article mentions his research on Nazi Germany, the Rwandan genocide, car bombs. It paints this picture of someone obsessed with violence in its many forms.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction to make here. Traditional counterterrorism efforts, they often focus on specific ideologies or groups. But in this case, the driving force seems to be something much more internal, a fascination with violence itself.
Right, and that makes it so much harder to predict and prevent. Right, because how do you identify someone who's simply fascinated by violence, who might be planning something, but hasn't, connected with any specific group or ideology?
It's a huge challenge for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. We see this increasingly with lone wolf attacks, individuals who operate independently and whose motivations are often difficult to discern.
And in this case, it seems like there were missed opportunities to intervene. This wasn't Rudakubana's first brush with violent behavior.
Right. The article details a number of warning signs that were unfortunately overlooked. Back in 2019, when he was just 13, he called a children's advice line and asked, "What should I do if I want to kill somebody?" He also admitted to bringing a knife to school with the intention of killing a bully.
And just 2 months after that, he assaulted another student with a hockey stick. I mean, this pattern of escalating violence, it's terrifying, and it really makes you wonder, where were the safety nets?
That's the big question. The article mentions that he was actually referred 3 times to prevent, the government's anti-extremism program.
3 times. What were the referrals for?
The first was for researching school shootings in class, the second for posting images of Muammar Gaddafi online, and the third for researching a London terror attack.
So there were definitely red flags, but it seems like the system failed to connect the dots. How does that even happen? What went wrong?
Well, that's something a public inquiry is trying to determine. Was it a failure of communication between agencies, a lack of resources, or were there fundamental flaws in how the program itself operates?
And it's also worth considering that Rudakubana, he doesn't really fit the traditional model of an extremist. He wasn't driven by a specific ideology. He was driven by this internal obsession with violence. Could that have played a role in how his case was handled?
Absolutely. This case really challenges our understanding of extremism and how we approach prevention.
Talk to your friends, your family, your community members about what you've learned. Because ultimately, it's through open dialogue and collective action that we can create a safer, more compassionate world